Okay, then let's get started. I've got a film to recommend. For As You Like It, I discovered that the BBC version is available free on YouTube. Someone put it up. I haven't seen it since it came out. I did notice in retrospect Helen Mirren again is in it, and as Rosalind. I sampled it a bit this morning. It looks quite good. It's supposedly relatively uncut. So that would be the version to watch, especially since it's free. There's an old movie version with Laurence Olivier that's also up on YouTube. It's pretty bad. The actress who plays Rosalind, English is not her native language, and it shows. So go with that one on that. Okay, we'll do. I think I'll take the whole week on As You Like It. If I get to 12th night on Thursday, it'll just be to introduce it, so you don't have to have it read by then. I think we're in sync now with the sections and the classes, As You Like It this week for section 12th night next week. And it looks like we can finish by the original date that I marked conclusion, but I'll leave it open to have a class the first day of reading period if we need it. So, I want to go over what we're doing since it's somewhat peculiar as an approach to Shakespeare, and sometimes I surprise myself. So we're in the middle of looking at three comedies, Midsummer Night's Dream, As You Like It, and Twelfth Night. And I'm trying to approach them politically, but not in a conventional sense. I'm not looking so much at the politics of the communities in these three plays. As we'll see in Twelfth Night, there barely is a community to talk of. There's something rather utopian about these communities that allows the problems to be worked out with happy endings. Many of the real-world problems that we encounter in our lives do not come into play in these comedies. But I'm trying to show that asking political questions about these plays does give us a new angle on them and can allow them to appear, quite frankly, deeper intellectually than we normally think them, and maybe comedy is worthy of serious philosophical consideration. But also including these plays in a course on Shakespeare's politics, even though this would not normally be done, because they also teach us something about politics. And specifically about some of the aspects of life that are recalcitrant to politics, that are somehow outside the normal control of politics. And that's where it's worth considering. This is a course on Shakespeare's view of politics, but also of his view of the limits of politics. That is, I've been trying to show you how centrally important politics is in Shakespeare, how he feels that it's one of the most important human activities. It reveals aspects of human life that cannot be revealed in other fields of endeavor. By the same token, I want to stress that Shakespeare doesn't think that politics is everything, that it simply is what human life consists of. And indeed, I think it's very important to see that Shakespeare sees that politics comes into conflict with a lot of other very legitimate and important human values. In fact, that's the source of tragedy in Shakespeare. For example, as we saw in Romeo and Juliet, love can become an absolute value to two young lovers, so great that they're willing to sacrifice their position in the city of Verona. They're so wrapped up in their love, they're in fact willing to go to their deaths. And that shows that somehow they represent a dimension of human value that politics doesn't encompass. And Shakespeare, in that play, makes us feel that way about love, that it can become a kind of religion and an absolute value to this young man and young woman. So in general, Shakespeare, I think, focuses the comedies on eros, specifically on love between young men and women, and shows that that's a very powerful aspect of life that can't always be kept under political control. In that sense, eros is a political subject because it's a political problem, just as we saw in discussing thumos. In the case of thumos, it's this very divisive force. It makes people angry. It can tear apart a community. Nevertheless, it's also essential to politics because it's what fuels political ambition, it's what fuels courage, the kind of qualities you need in war. And so indeed, to the extent there's a solution to the thumos problem in politics, I don't believe there is any full solution. Thumos is what makes politics so profoundly problematic. But to the extent there's a solution, it involves channeling thumos into politics, into patriotism, into honor, devotion to the city, to the country, turning spiritedness into public spiritedness. Now, there's something similar going on with Eros in Shakespeare. It's a very threatening force because it's so irrational. And we've seen that in Midsummer Night's Dream. It drives young people crazy. And by the middle of the play, it's produced a virtual civil war among Athenians. Demetrius and Lysander are at each other's throats, and even Hermia and Helena are at each other's throats. They've gone crazy with erotic longing. Now, part of that we saw was because thumos got wrapped up in it, and they became contentious over erotic matters. Now, it's this eruption of irrationality is very controlled dramatically in the play because of the framework of the play. We know that Oberon is in control, that a lot of the craziness we're seeing is the result of a love juice. We know we're in a comedy, that this is going to work out. But still, it's pretty threatening. And Eros is a threatening power. It can be a deeply divisive power. And above all, it's deeply irrational, as perhaps some of you may have experienced in your lives. And Theseus thinks he can be in control of it. And you can say in some ways this is the claim of the city. The city would like to be in control of everything, especially these ancient cities. But in general, what we see in Shakespeare's cities have walls. They present, now this was much truer in Shakespeare's day than in our own. Indeed, up until not too long ago, cities were in a certain emblematic way walled off from nature. You could see the limits of the city by its walls, and it created its walls between itself and the outside world, nature, so that back in Romeo and Juliet on page 73, it's Act 3, Scene 3, line 16, the friar, having his trans-political perspective as a Catholic priest, says to Romeo, "Be patient, for the world is broad and wide." Very philosophical attitude. And Romeo says there is no world without Verona walls. And in a way, that's the titanic claim of the city, that it encompasses the whole world, that everything of importance happens within the walls of Verona. Now, one student pointed out to me something I'd missed in the class, in all my readings of the play. You can look this up. It's on page 9 of Romeo and Juliet. It's Act 1, Scene 1, line 123. Benvolio reveals that Romeo has been out on a nature walk. A troubled mind drave me to walk abroad, where underneath the grove of sycamore that westward rooteth from the city side, so early working I see your son, Romeo. The grove of sycamore that westward rooted from the city side. There it is. Marvelous. There is something outside Verona's walls, and it's a grove of trees. And if only Romeo and Juliet had been in a comedy, they would have ended up in that forest, and everything would have worked out right. But instead, we learn line 140, away from light steals home, my heavy son in private in his chamber pens himself, shuts up his windows, locks fair daylight out, and makes himself an artificial night. It's a wonderful contrast there between the sycamore grove and this artificial night. I should point out that the word artificial, up until the late 18th century, had no negative connotations as it does now. Artificial meant full of artifice and was a compliment. If you said to someone, your work of art is really artificial, he would say thanks, up until the Romantics transformed the meaning of the word to something negative. But in any case, the idea of Romeo living in something artificial, the product of human art, in contrast to the natural world. That's a very fine image for what I'm discussing here, because what we see in Midsummer Night's Dream in the Forest of Athens, this week in As You Like in the Forest of Arden, is Shakespeare is setting up a natural world in contrast to the city. And indeed, these comedies work out because the characters, unlike Romeo, are able to find a world beyond Verona's walls. They're able to get out into a more natural world and get more back in touch with nature. So Midsummer Night's Dream is really interesting for the way it sets up some kind of tension between the city of Athens and a more natural world. And that's why I ventured into that discussion last time of Shakespeare's understanding of nature. I'm still somewhat skeptical of my own view of this. It's something I came up with only a couple of weeks ago, but I do think if we're going to take Shakespeare seriously as a philosopher, he ought to have some view and understanding of nature, and A Midsummer Night's Dream supplies that. And what it shows is that Theseus doesn't understand the fullness of the natural world. And we see that in general in his initial belief that he can control Eros. And specifically when he tells Hermia, your father is a god, he made you out of wax, he composed you. And in a way, this is the city's claim. We produce our citizens. And notice it's a father and not a mother. We would say unnatural. The father is like an artist shaping the daughter out of wax. If that is what had happened, he would own her. But of course, it's not what happened. A woman produced that daughter. And I believe the whole role of Oberon and Titania in the play is to suggest what these forces of nature might be. Now, in view of the question at the end of last class, I do want to clarify, I do not believe that Shakespeare believed in the existence of Oberon and Titania, nor was he trying to get us to convert our belief so that we'd found a new religion of Oberon and Titania. He's trying to suggest an image of nature by personifying it. And indeed, in Theseus's famous speech on the lunatic, the lover, and the poet, that's exactly what he says poets do. They take airy nothings and give to them a local habitation and a name. And he talks there about how what poets do is give us an image of nature by personifying it. So all I was saying about Oberon and Titania is, in effect, this is Shakespeare's image of nature in mythological or poetic terms. And you could put it this way, if we wanted to infer from the natural order as we see it, what's behind it, and posit those as personal beings, it would look something like Oberon and Titania and Puck and these fairies. This would be the opposite of conventional theology. As I was suggesting last time, in conventional theology, you start from revealed knowledge of God, which includes in the Christian tradition the idea that God is omnipotent, omniscient, and benevolent, and one. And from that, you try to relate that being to the existing world and how things happen to human beings. And that's a deep theological problem, so-called problem of evil. Given that conception of God, how do you reconcile it with the way the world looks to us, which is pretty good but not perfect? And terrible things happen, like airline crashes. These are things it's very hard to explain how that can be part of a just cosmic order. In effect, I'm saying Shakespeare's doing the opposite here. Very empirical. Let's start from the way the world looks. And then, if we're going to have some kind of deity, infer its nature from the way the world looks. And there we see, this is the Goldilocks planet. It's pretty good for human beings. And crops generally grow, and the weather isn't totally unbelievably bad, though it came close this year. But on the other hand, it's not perfect. and nasty things happen and things go out of whack. And Shakespeare says, well, the way you would explain that is the way millions of people over thousands of years explained it, polytheism. That you would have a world in which there were different gods, and sometimes they're at odds, and sometimes they make mistakes, and that would account for, in a kind of rough way, for the world is. And notice above all that there would be a female principle in nature, that there'd be Oberon and Titania. This is the way every pagan civilization has always viewed divinity. The natural understanding, or the obvious understanding of nature, is it involves a female principle. In many ways, the fundamental fact of nature is generation, of growth, plant life. And again, through most of human history, that was very basic, watching the crops grow. And so you would think nature's got to have some female aspect to it. So we have Oberon and Titania. Now again, I'm not saying Shakespeare is trying to set up a new religion here, but you can say he's trying to set up an understanding of nature that would be very relevant to politics, because it is the kind of world we confront with lots of political consequences. That is, if the world were perfect, there'd be nothing we had to do about it. And politics would have little function. Everything would be perfect, so we could only meddle with it. Now, in fact, maybe the world is perfect. Many theologians have tried to prove it. This is the famous Dr. Pangloss in Voltaire's Candide and the notion of optimism. But it does not look perfect at first glance to most of us. And so we need to do something about it. And politics might be able to improve the world. On the other hand, the world isn't simply imperfect. It's not horrible. We're not living on Venus, where every day the weather report is 697 degrees and sulfuric. This world's pretty decent. It's a pretty decent planet on which to live. So one view would be the world's totally imperfect, or it's the product of a demonic being, and then there's also nothing to do about it. If the world's sort of run by people sort of like Oberon and Titania, we got some work to do, but we can do it. Now, by the way, this is the ancient understanding of the world, and especially in Aristotle, that nature aims at perfection, but often fails, often makes mistakes, those blots of nature that Oberon talks about at the end. Again, I may be going off the deep end here, but I think Midsummer Night's Dream is an attempt to formulate some sense of what the natural world is in relation to the political world. You can say that Theseus's problem is he doesn't sufficiently understand this. He doesn't understand that there's a natural world out there that sets limits to him. And indeed, the Midsummer Night's Dream is all about the relation of individuals to the political community and the limits on both. And again, all turning on this issue of eros. One thing eros produces is a very subjective vision. This moment of love, you fall in love with someone and that person is just absolutely uniquely beautiful. You can't understand why everyone else doesn't feel the same way about her or him. You're absolutely convinced of this. And Shakespeare shows this can be magnificent in Romeo and Juliet, but it also can be tragic. Now Shakespeare associates this kind of individual vision with the night world, with dreams, with something nobody else sees, which the rest of the community can't recognize. And again, there is a dimension that politics can't encompass. The city cannot talk to crazy young lovers when they're in that mood. They're seeing things differently from the way anyone else sees. There's something deeply solipsistic about this. It is why it's a dreamlike state, and why Romeo says, this is too good to be true. And the same thing that happens in Midsummer Night's Dream. That's why Shakespeare associates it with dreams. Dreams, the most private kind of vision. No one else can get inside your head. And it's wonderful, but easily turns into a nightmare, as we see in Midsummer Night's Dream. That is, these lovers, Hermia and Lysander and Demetrius and Helen, they see they've gone too far. This is not what they bargained for. It's more than they can handle. It's too dreamlike, it's nightmarish. And so they willfully go back to the city. As we saw, they start invoking the daylight. Let's get out of this nighttime world. Let's get back together. Let's get back to where we're seeing things the way other people see them. Remember how they keep checking things out. Is this what happened? Was Duke Theseus here? They are reintegrated in the community and are happy to be so. That's a comic ending. The tragic ending is when you stick true to your vision to the end and are willing to die for it. We're in a comedy in Midsummer Night's Dream, and the characters are not willing to die for it. They want the safety of getting back into the community. Now, you notice with Bottom in the play, he's given a twisted religious vision that quotes 1 Corinthians. He's given the vision of a goddess. He's Aristotle's man without a city who is both a beast and a god. He's transfigured as no other character in Shakespeare is, and he can't handle it. And he wants to talk about it, but he can't find the words for it. And he says to his friends, if I tell you the truth, I'm no true Athenian. And he's damn right about that. He can't be part of the city if he's having visions of him being united with the Queen of the Fairies. And so that's the way in which comedy and tragedy have a political dimension. They deal with the relation of private vision to the city. And if it's sustained and uncompromised, then you have tragedy. If characters are willing to compromise, then you can have comedy. And this is a terrible thing to say, but lovers are willing to compromise. They are willing to accept second best. As I said, the choice in the play could be either Hermia or death, or Hermia or Helena. The choice, Hermia or Helena, is a much healthier choice. And Demetrius is willing to make it. Now, a little drug helps him make the decision. But let me put it this way. Eros is willing to compromise in a way that Thumos is not. Thumos is all about first best, not second best. It's all about being number one. And the man in the grip of Thumos, the whole point is he won't settle for being second best. That's what Homer shows about Achilles. It's what we saw about Hotspur. Whereas lovers, yes, they can take, Thumos can get wrapped up in love, Romeo and Juliet, no substitutes, no second best, and they die. But for the majority of lovers, they kind of got interested in Eros because they were interested in happiness. And they realized sometimes happiness requires you to compromise. And of course, it's easier to do this when Shakespeare provides acceptable substitutes. At first, Hermia is the only woman in Athens, like everyone wants her. But, there is Helena there, and they're not really that different. And so isn't it better for Demetrius to live and accept Helena than to go off on a Romeo and Juliet trip and die? And that's, Eros is potentially a unifying force in the city. That's the irony of this, that it's such a divisive force. But Shakespeare shows it can be a unifying force. Eros brings people together, literally in the act of sex. But more generally, it can provide the basis for marriage, the family, all these social institutions that go to build up the city. So in A Midsummer Night's Dream, Eros flips from being the problem to being the solution. Maybe Theseus gets a glimpse of that when he allows this marriage that initially he was forbidding, when he sees now the lovers are paired off and things can be resolved. So what I'm getting at here is we're beginning to explore the most profound philosophical question there is for Shakespeare and many others, that what's the relation of the political community to nature? They are not simply the same thing. somehow the political community is in tension with nature. There are these forces, thumos, eros, they're irrational, they are part of human nature. We would say somehow politics has to deal with them. Politicians are fooling themselves if they think these aren't problems, but there are at least ways of channeling these forces into politically productive ways, and that's something that Shakespeare explores. I think his comedies are really interesting and specifically philosophically interesting because they raise the question of the relation of the political order to the larger national order. A natural order. When you're stuck in cities, you sometimes can't see that. And so these plays, particularly Midsummer Night's Dream and As You Like It, take us out into a forest and raise this issue of what is the relation between politics and nature, and that's what we're going to explore this week, and we're going to come back to it in an even more profound sense when we look at King Lear. So again, that's how I'm trying to integrate the study of these comedies into the study of Shakespeare. So now let's turn to As You Like It, which deals precisely with this issue of the relation between the political order and the natural order, because it's a play about the relation between the court and the country, the countryside. This is a genre called pastoral. And once again, Shakespeare works within a literary genre and criticizes it and adapts it to his purposes. Now, pastoral poetry goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks, Theocritus and his idols. It appears in Latin poetry. Virgil's a famous example. In general, this is poetry set in the farmland, usually among shepherds, but sometimes among goat herds. But the typical pastoral poem involves a bunch of shepherds out in the countryside. They're living the simple, easy life. They are innocent and morally virtuous. There's usually a wise old shepherd spouting sententious maxims about how good country life is. And, he's often named Corin, as in As You Like It. There's a sense that love is innocent and uncorrupt. It's rather interesting that pastoral poetry tends to develop in very corrupt societies, like late Republican Rome and above all the early era of the Empire in Rome. In countries that have decadent courts, in fantasy is to retire to rural life. Some of you may know that Marie Antoinette had a country village built at Versailles. You can still see it. It's quite amazing if you walk far enough on the grounds of Versailles. There's this complete country village that she used to like to go to get away from the all-time corrupt court of Louis XVI. Now, similarly, in Shakespeare's day, I don't want to, say nasty things about Queen Elizabeth, but her court had a lot of corruption, a lot of infighting, a lot of backstabbing, a lot of bribery, a lot of political machination. And so, not surprisingly, pastoral poetry developed in the Elizabethan court. Sir Philip Sidney wrote a long prose pastoral romance called the Arcadia. He liked it so much he wrote it twice. Edmund Spenser wrote something called the Shepherd's Calendar, which was a kind of imitation of Virgil. And in that famous and infinitely long book, The Faerie Queene, the sixth book is a pastoral poem. And we get out among the shepherds there. So Shakespeare was very aware of this literary form, and you can see he has it in mind here and As You Like It, because he is using the characters who are shepherds and getting the characters out into the countryside. I think he's deeply skeptical of the form because he finds it simplistic. it sets up an overly simplified contrast between the decadence of the court and the healthy innocence of the countryside. I think Shakespeare wants to challenge that. Nevertheless, he does begin with the sense that the court is corrupt. And that's really central to this play. And it's what we're trying to get away from with what you might call the long pastoral interlude in the play. That is, there are a lot of problems in this court of Duke Sr. For one thing, Duke Sr. has just been deposed by Duke Jr., so we've had a kind of coup in the court, and someone illegitimate is running it, Duke Frederick is not nice. He mistreats his own daughter. He certainly mistreats the daughter of the exiled Duke. And we see things are not going right in this court. For one thing, we begin the whole play with injustice against this young man, Orlando. In the case of Duke Frederick, the younger generation has displaced the older generation. In the case of Orlando, the older generation has been thwarted. Orlando's father set up a nice will so that he would be brought up well, but his older brother is not being fair about it. So this is, what is this, page 3, so Act 1, Scene 1, about line 6. For my part, he keeps me rustically at home, or to speak more properly, stays me here unkempt, for call you that keeping for gentlemen of my birth, that differs not from the stalling of an ox. So this is unfair. He's being treated out of his birthright. And we see there's just a lot of injustice in this world of people not getting their due. But notice that what he says is injustice is, do you call that keeping for a gentleman of my birth that differs not from the stalling of an ox? I'd like to say from the beginning, the suggestion is that man is not an ox, that we are not just animals, that we have some kind of higher birthright that would involve a good education. So I'd like to suggest that from the beginning, the issue of education functions here, and the notion that if we were left in a pure state of nature, kind of animal state of nature, we would not fulfill our true natures as human beings. So on page 5, Act 1, Scene 1, about line 45, Orlando is willing to make some concessions to Oliver, his older brother. The courtesy of nations allows you my better, in that you were the firstborn, but the same tradition takes not away my blood, were there 20 brothers betwixt us. I have as much as my father and me as you, albeit I confess your coming before me is nearer to his reverence. So he's willing to make some concessions to the custom of primogeniture, that the oldest son is in charge of the family. But he's not willing to let that go so far as to deny him, Orlando, all rights whatsoever. And indeed, we get a sense in this play that once again, youth is getting gypped, that the old are cheating the young, that youth is not getting its due. You've seen this, the tyranny of the old, in a number of Shakespeare's plays. But in this play, we begin with an answer to that. Wrestling. That is, here's Orlando being denied his rights. But there's one arena in which he can assert his rights. Namely, there's a wrestling challenge going on. And we have here this wrestler, Charles, who is the champion. You can say, in this sense, the ruler by convention here. And he is associated with Duke Frederick and with Oliver. Oliver's trying to set it up so that Charles will kill Orlando, and then Oliver won't have to worry about him anymore. And the nice thing is we now have a very objective situation here. It's the marvelous thing about athletics, that it offers an objective standard. It doesn't matter if opinion scorns Orlando if the smart Vegas money is on Charles. Doesn't matter what opinion says. They're going to get in a ring and settle it. And settle it they do. Orlando wins. The youthful hero shows his stuff. Wouldn't it be wonderful if all political issues could be settled so clearly, and we had Stone Cold Steve Austin as president, as we did end up with Jesse Ventura as governor once. That is, it's kind of funny, but Richard II. He's, by convention he's king, but did he have the nature of king? Well, if we just had a wrestling match between Bolingbroke and Richard II, we know how that would have gone. And I'm making light of this, and I think it is a funny touch, but I think it is an image, for one thing, of the revolt of the young against the old. That's why Duke Frederick is not happy about this and wants Orlando banished. This is a kind of challenge to his regime. It is the young rising up. And in general, we see in this play a world where people are not given credit for their virtue. Page 29, or this is Act 2, Scene 3, about line 10, where Adam, the servant, says to Orlando, "Know you not, master, to some kind of men their graces serve them but as enemies. No more do yours. Your virtues, gentle master, are sanctified and holy traitors to you. And what a world is this when one as calmly envenoms him that bears it." This is a terrible inversion of values that has occurred in this corrupt world. Precisely what makes Orlando virtuous makes him a villain in the eyes of this world, of people like Oliver, and of people like Duke Frederick. Indeed, Oliver himself says on page 8, this would be Act 1, Scene 1, about line 98. About line 158. For my soul, yet I know no why hates nothing more than he. Yet he's gentle, never schooled and yet learned, full of noble device, of all sorts enchantingly beloved, and indeed so much in the heart of the world, and especially among people who best know him, that I am altogether misprized. Virtue is regarded as vice in this world. Presumably vice is regarded as virtue. It's not a healthy situation. And indeed, the chief characteristic of this world is that the truth is not out. The truth cannot be found. As we see on page 12, this is Act 1, Scene 2, about line 80, when Celia says to the fool, Touchstone, "Speak no more, you'll be whipped for taxation one of these days." And Touchstone says, "The more pity that fools may not speak wisely what wise men do foolishly." This is a world in which truth is silenced. Truth is silenced by whipping, something we'll see very seriously in King Lear soon. But the more pity that fools may not speak wisely what wise men do foolishly. This is a world which fundamentally inverts wisdom and foolishness, so that the truth cannot come out. And that's what's wrong with it. That's why we have to escape it. It's so confining. And that's why there's another inversion. This is page 24. So the very end of Act 1, Scene 3, about line 135. Things have gone really badly for Celia and Rosalind. The evil Duke Frederick has banished Rosalind, and so Celia, her dear friend, will accompany her. And so Celia says, line 135, Act 1, Scene 3, now go and we contend to liberty and not to banishment. Duke Frederick called this banishment, but it's really liberty. We're escaping from this world which is so confining. and in which virtue cannot flourish. And again, we're in a world where the healthful young energies of the community cannot flourish. They are repressed by these evil, corrupt forces. And so we then switch at that point to the old Duke, Duke Senior. This is page 25, Act 2, Scene 1, where again he sees his exile as liberating. So this is Act 2, Scene 1, line 1. Now, my co-mates and brothers in exile, hath not old custom made this life more sweet than that of painted pomp? Are not these woods more free from peril than the envious court? Here feel we not the penalty of Adam, the season's difference, as the icy fang and churlish chiding of winter's wind, which when it bites and blows upon my body, even till I shrink with cold, I smile and say, this is no flattery. These are counselors that feelingly persuade me what I am. Sweet are the uses of adversity. Now, we see here that the greatest evil of the court is flattery. And this is something we've been seeing since Richard II, that the biggest problem with being in power is that people lie to you and flatter your illusions. And in a sense, the greatest price you pay for political power is being cut off from the very truth you need to govern well. And we saw how this played out in the whole story of Prince Hal. Eastcheap was his forest of Athens. It was his forest of Arden. It was his pastoral escape. It was his way in getting into a simpler world where people will flatter him less. Here, the Duke has to be banished before he can come to appreciate it. But the point here is that he feels the cold, the icy fang and churlish chiding in winter's head, which when it bites and blows my body, even till I shrink with cold, I smile and say, this is no flattery, this guy, that feelingly persuade me what I am. Remember what Henry V had to go through to reach this moment, to understand that the king is but a man. We actually saw Richard II do it also when he was deposed and on the verge of death. It's something we're going to see in King Lear, that kings live in a bubble. They live surrounded by flatterers. It takes a lot for them to understand what the truth is, and in particular the idea that the weather here could teach you that you're just a human being, that you have the same limits as other human beings. The weather does not flatter us, as we in Boston have learned so recently. If you turn to page 35, so Act 2, Scene 5, a number of the songs in the play emphasize this. So Act 2, Scene 5, about line 6. Here shall we see no enemy but winter and rough weather. Getting outside the court is to get into a world where we no longer face these human vices like envy and jealousy. No, the only enemy here is rough weather, and pages 44 to 45. So Act 2, Scene 7, about line 174. Blow, blow, thou winter wind, thou art not so unkind as man's ingratitude. And then on page 45, line 184, freeze, freeze, thou bitter sky, that dost not bite so nigh as benefits forgot. Though thou the waters warp, thy sting is not so sharp, a friend remembered not. Yes, it's very cold out in the forest, and it bites and it pains, but it's nothing like the pain of ingratitude. Of all the awful things that happen out in the court. And so that's the release here. That's the sense of benefit of going out into the country. Shakespeare must have had an incredible sense of how much flattery went on in the court. He was around it enough, presumably, to see how nasty people were with each other in the court. And there are many signs of this in the play towards the end. For example, this would be pages 98 to 99. Touchstone explains what life was like in the court. So this is Act 5, Scene 4, about line 44. His description of life in the court. I have trod a measure, I can dance well. This is what is good in the court. I have flattered a lady. I have been politic with my friend, smooth with my enemy. I have undone 3 tailors. I've had 4 quarrels and like to have fought 1. This is what goes on in the court. All this nastiness, they then goes on to give an elaborate sense of the kind of rituals, of the kind of way you respond to someone. If you turn to page 100 at 5, Scene 4, about line 90, so require in print by the book as you have books for good manners. I will name the degrees: the first, the retort courteous; the second, the quip modest; the third, the reply churlish; the fourth, the reproof, and so on. There are all these rituals of conflict in the court, and it's so much healthier out in the countryside. Here, people finally just speak the truth to each other. Again, you can see it in Washington, D.C., in any political place, the sort of rituals of communication. You have to read between the lines. And when people are basically telling each other to go to hell, they couch it in such careful diplomatic terms, we'd say. Turn to page 55. This is Act 3, Scene 2, about line 251. This is a dialogue between Jacques and Orlando. Line 251, I thank you for your company, but good faith, I'd as lief have been myself alone. And Orlando replies, and so had I, but yet for fashion's sake, I thank you for your society. God be with you. Let's meet as little as we can. I do desire we may be better strangers. What a relief it would be if people would ever speak this way in the world, if they'd say what they really meant. I pray you, mar no more trees with writing love songs in their barks. I pray you, mar no more my verses with reading them ill-favourably. Rosalind is your love's name? Yes, that. I do not like her name. There was no thought of pleasing you when she was christened. This is the kind of liberation that's represented by the forest world. You don't have to go through all the rituals anymore. You don't have to be polite. You can say what you mean. You tell off someone. And I do. You see, this is presented as liberating. It is so hard to live in the stranglehold of the court, where your every move is watched and monitored, and you have to go through the proper daily rituals and tell the king or the duke or the prince what he wants to hear, and dance around things and use euphemisms and circumlocutions. There's something so liberating about this world of the countryside, and that is the dream of the pastoral world. To get back to basics, to escape all the phoniness and hyper-sophistication of the court. And Shakespeare does show that, because we saw this in the history plays, and so strongly in the case of Prince Hal. Everything that's corrupting about court life. But there's a problem. And Shakespeare always sees both sides of a question. And so he forces us to confront the life of the court here and see how real it is. The life of the country, and see what it's really like. That maybe it's not as good as it's cracked up to be. Yes, there are limits to the court, and it's great to get out of it. But maybe there are limits to the countryside too. And what's the problem with the countryside? The country. The famous line, the old World War I song, how are you going to keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris? That is, there is the problem of the country bumpkin. What are people like if they really just grow up in the country? And so Shakespeare decides to present us with the all-time quintessential country bumpkin. Turn to page 89. And the all-time quintessential country bumpkin is named William. This seems to be an in-joke on Shakespeare's part here. I can't figure out why else he chose the name William here. And this is Touchstone's dialogue. This is Act 5, Scene 1, about line 19. Dialogue between Touchstone and William. Touchstone, the fool of the play. Touchstone is a criterion stone. It's a stone that jewelers use to judge gems. It's your touchstone. It's the way you judge it. And he is a way of judging human beings in the play. So top of page 89. How old are you, friend? 25, sir. A ripe age. Is thy name William? William, sir. A fair name. Was born in the forest here? Aye, sir. I thank God. Thank God. A good answer. Art rich. Face, sir. So-so. So-so is good, very excellent good, and yet it is not, it is but so-so. Art thou wise? Aye, sir, I have a pretty wit. Why, thou sayest well. I do remember saying the fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool. The heathen philosopher, when he had desired to eat a grape, would open his lips when he had put it into his mouth, meaning thereby that grapes were made to eat and lips to open. Heathen philosopher, it's Socrates again. Our old friend Socrates. The fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool. Socrates' claim in the Apology that he was the wisest man in Athens because everyone else thought they were wise. Only Socrates knew that he was not wise and therefore was the wisest man in Athens. So Touchstone is a kind of Socrates figure here, just as Falstaff was in the Henry IV plays. And here we see the real dweller in the countryside, William. And William is not the brightest light on the block here. Shakespeare did come from the country. This is the forest of Arden here. It is the Ardennes forest in Belgium, site of the Battle of the Bulge. But Shakespeare also grew up near a forest of Arden, A-R-D-E-N, as it's spelled here. And there may be some incredible in-joke going on here. Shakespeare may have been treated as a country bumpkin when he came to London. It's kind of a little town of Stratford. For all we know, he spoke with some kind of regional dialect. And he shows up in the big apple of its day in London. And he proved himself, but there probably was a time when, oh God, what are we going to do with the kid from Stratford? He wants a part in the play. And making fun of the fact the dumbest kid on the block is named William. But this is a problem with the countryside. If you grow up in the countryside, you have no schooling, and you end up like William. The people that seem to be doing well in the countryside had the benefit of growing up in the court. And if you go back to Duke Sr.'s speech on page 25, you will see that he goes on to say, this is page 25, Act 2, Scene 1, about line 12, sweet are the uses of adversity, which like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel in his head, and this our life, exempt from public haunt, finds tongues in trees, books in running brooks, and sermons in stones, and good in everything. Now, exempt from public haunt, yeah, it's good to be out of the court, but they have internalized the court. They bring it with them, so that they find books in the running brooks, sermons in stones. These people are literate. I assure you, William is not. These people know how to read. They know what books are. And although it's good for them to escape from the court, they need to get back to it. And indeed, this play has some of the structure that Midsummer Night's Dream does. That is, one begins in a kind of impasse, a world where the desires of youth are being thwarted. We have to get outside of that world to reorder the desires, but with an aim of getting back to the community, getting back to Athens in Midsummer Night's Dream, getting back to the court here. We end this play with the promise of getting back to the court. But nevertheless, the idea is not that human beings belong in the forest. Shakespeare is not a primitivist. That's why I stress from the beginning that Orlando will not be satisfied with the stalling of an ox. Human beings need educations to develop their fullest potential. And that occurs in the court, not the country. Notice that when Orlando runs into Rosalind disguised as Ganymede, he says, "Your accent is a little too good for the forest. Where do you learn to speak that way?" And the answer is in the court. And in general, you see in this world that for all the virtue of the countryside, it is accompanied by a kind of simplicity to the point of dumbness here. It's a problem with this so-called natural world. Yes, it's free of backstabbing and flattery, but it can be too threatening. On a very basic level, it involves living at a level of bare subsistence. Even Duke Sr. has to admit it took a while for them to get used to the court, to the countryside, and it turns out they're now committing the crime of killing deer in order to survive, and they would not be able to survive without that. Indeed, on page 26, Act 2, Scene 1, about line 25, we learn the melancholy Jacas grieves at that, and in that kind swears you do more usurp than doth your brother that hath banished you. This movement of the court to the countryside in response to an act of usurpation is itself a usurpation, because they're displacing the indigenous population, we would say, and they're feeding off the deer here. And indeed, we see in the case of Orlando and Adam, they get to the countryside, and it's not so great or so pastoral. They're starving to death because they can't find anything to eat. And Orlando has to break up a very nice picnic with his sword demanding food. This is on page 41. This is Act 2, Scene 7, line 88, where Orlando comes in, "Forbear, and eat no more. Why, I have eaten none yet, nor shalt not till necessity be served." What kind should this cock come of? And Duke Senior says, "Art thou thus boldened, man, by thy distress, or else a rude despiser of good manners, that in civility thou seemst so empty?" So here the countryside is devoid of civility. And we're reminded that there's something to be said for good manners. A lot of this play is about the phoniness of the manners of the court and makes fun of the manners of the court. But when some guy shows up with a sword in the middle of lunch demanding food, we're reminded there's something to be said for civility. And Orlando says, "You touched my vein at first. The thorny point of bare distress hath ta'en from me the show of smooth civility, yet am I inland bred and know some nurture." I'm not from the country. I look like some savage here, but really I was brought up well, and it's only because we're starving here. And he says, still on page 42 at line 106, "Speak you so gently, pardon me, I pray you, I thought that all things had been savage here." And we're reminded that this state of nature could be savage, that the pure state of nature might involve no civility at all. And we begin to see one of these troubling disjunctions that Shakespeare is always portraying. The world of the court is corrupt and often rewards vice, not virtue, but it is the world of civilization in the sense of courtliness, of having manners, of having civility. The world of the country seems more attractive at first. It's simpler. It's, we would say, more natural. Things are more spontaneous. We don't have to go through all these elaborate rituals. On the other hand, there are ways in which it reduces human beings to savagery, because it reduces them to pure necessity, denies them civility, and denies them an education. Now, in many ways, the great statement of this paradox is given on page 47 by Touchstone. This is Act 3, Scene 2, about line 11. Corinne, it's often the name of the wise shepherd, asks Touchstone, and how do you like this shepherd's life, Master Touchstone? Truly, shepherd. Then we get a series of paradoxes here. Truly, shepherd, in respect of itself, it is a good life. But in respect that it is a shepherd's life, it is not. In respect that it is solitary, I like it very well. But in respect that it is private, it is a very vile life. Now, in respect that it is in the fields, it pleases me well. But in respect that it is not in the court, it is tedious. As it is a spare life, look you, it fits my humor well. But that there is no more plenty in it, it goes much against my stomach. Has any philosophy in there, in the shepherd, and it suggests we've just had a very philosophical statement here. And to go through it, it really sets up the two sides of the dialogue between the country and the court. Truly, shepherd respect himself as a good life. It's a good life, good healthy life out here among the sheep. We're all innocent. But in respect that it's a shepherd's life, it is not. I'd love to be out in the country, except I got to live as a shepherd. And what kind of life is that as a shepherd? In respect that it's solitary, I like it very well. Everyone wants to be alone every once in a while. Out in the country, you can be by yourself. But in respect that it's private, it is a very vile life. Now, Touchstone's a performer. He's a comedian. He's a professional fool. So yeah, he likes his private moments, but without an audience, he's nothing. Now, in practice in the fields, it pleased me well. Again, it's great to be out here in the countryside. It's so healthy. But in respect that's not in the court, it is tedious. To go into the healthy country, you got to give up the court. And the court is where the entertainment is. It's where the shows are. It's show business. As is a spare life, look you, it fits my humor well. Again, healthy diet, back to basics, live off fruit and nuts and sheep. It's so much healthier for you. But as there's no more plenty in it, it goes much against my stomach. Yeah, it's a lot healthier than having the big banquets back at court. But every once in a while, you miss the overindulgence of a court banquet. So really, Touchstone is setting up here the two sides of it. And his whole dialogue here with Corinne is fascinating. Corinne gets to give a good statement of the virtue of the country life. This is page 49, Act 3, Scene 2. Sir, Act 3, Scene 2, line 73. Sir, I am a true laborer. I earn that I eat. Get that I wear, owe no man hate, envy no man's happiness, glad of other men's good, content with my harm, and the greatest of my pride is to see my ewes graze and my lambs suck. This is as good as it gets. There's no hate, there's no envy, there's none of the vices of the court here. He doesn't have to harm anybody. He's just living the simple pastoral life here. Touchstone's reaction is that this is line 78. That's another simple sin in you, to bring the ewes and the rams together and to offer to get you living by the copulation of cattle. That's all that country life is. That's all that the shepherd's life is for Touchstone. It's the copulation of cattle. And so Touchstone actually speaks up for the virtues of the court here. Again, he's a court entertainer, page 48. So Act 3, Scene 2, line 40, he says that Corinne is damned, and Corinne doesn't know why. And Touchstone says, line 40, why, if thou never wast at court, thou never sawest good manners. And if thou never sawest good manners, then thy manners must be wicked. And wickedness is sin. and sin is damnation. Thou art in a parlous state, shepherd. Not a whit, Touchstone, Corn answers. Those that are good manners at the court are as ridiculous in the country as the behavior of the country is most mockable, the court. You told me you salute not at the court, but you kiss your hands. That courtesy would be uncleanly if courtiers were shepherds. Spend your whole life working in sheep dip. You don't want to shake hands with strangers all day. And again, this is marvelous stuff here. The epitome of Shakespeare's ability to see both sides of a question, why he's such a great dramatist. That what we see here is, things that work at the court don't work in the country, and vice versa. So don't try to apply the standards of the court on the country, and don't try to apply the standards of the country on the court. Now let me make a point clear. This is not what we call moral relativism. In fact, it's just the opposite of it. Corinne is not saying court, country, it doesn't matter. What in fact he's saying is that certain customs or manners are appropriate or not. What he's saying is there is a right set of customs for the court and there's a right set of customs for the country. They're not the same, but he's not indifferent to the difference. He's not saying that, it's all relative. You can live like a shepherd in the middle of Versailles, or you can live like Versailles in the middle of the countryside. No, this really is a notion that customs are appropriate or not to given circumstances. But it does suggest that Shakespeare is giving us a sense here that it's not a simple resolution here. You can't simply say that the court is better than the country or the country is better than the court. The court has many, many problems with it. And it's easy to be attracted to a simpler, more direct and spontaneous life with all these elaborate customs and rituals of the court. But you will pay a price for that. You're going to end up like William and Audrey. Or rather, you're going to begin that way and never get any better. The courtiers in this play have the enormous advantage of having been brought up in court and developed whatever refinement and civility the court can provide, and then they get to go to this more natural world. But it would be very different if they'd never seen the court at all. Then they'd be more like William, and their life would be so-so. So Shakespeare's posing a challenge here. Can we combine the best of both worlds here? Can we somehow combine the sophistication and refinement and civility of the court with the natural, spontaneous quality of the country life? It's not easy, but this is the world of comedy, and it's in comedy that we're able to combine the best of both worlds. And it will be the hope that these courtiers will be temporarily liberated from everything that's wrong with the court, brought out to in a more natural world, that is a world that's closer to nature in the physical sense, the world of sheep and goats, that they will recapture something of that natural quality, that they will come closer to nature, but then they're going to return to the court. That's the way they'll get the best of both worlds. Again, it's like a trip out of the country to get back to your roots, we would say, to get back to something more natural, to kind of recharge your spontaneity and not be so caught up in the rituals of the court and come back healthier. Now, everything that's presented in those terms in the play applies to love as well. And that's, again, the fundamental subject of this play is love. And it shows the same problem in love. And Shakespeare does this by giving us three pairs of lovers in this play. The central characters, Rosalind and Orlando, then Silvius and Phoebe, and then Audrey and Touchstone. And he sets this up so that we have two extremes in the middle, with Audrey and Touchstone on the one hand, and Sylvius and Phoebe, on the other hand, representing the extremes of love, and Orlando and Rosalind being the happy medium. We would say the Aristotelian mean, or we might say the Goldilocks couple here. They get it just right. And here's the problem. Sylvius and Phoebe are too refined in love. They are over-refined. They are our courtly lovers, again, our Petrarchan lovers. They're living in this highly artificial world of Petrarchan love, which has reached a stalemate already by the time we see them. They're not going anywhere. They're caught up in a world of Petrarchan love poetry. Their love is purely spiritual. They're at an impasse. Audrey and Touchstone are moving pretty fast. Unlike Petrarchan lovers, they get down to the nitty-gritty pretty fast. But their love is pure sex. It's purely physical. There's no poetry to it at all. By the way, Shakespeare indicates this beautifully. Sylvius and Phoebe, their love occurs only in poetry. Audrey and Touchstone, their love occurs only in prose. There's something very prosaic about their love. It's just getting down to business, getting down and dirty and down to business. Out in the countryside, what else is there to do? And it's just marvelous how Shakespeare portrays it. Love reduced to pure sex here. And Orlando and Rosalind have to be the happy medium. And so their love occurs in both poetry and prose. It's very balanced, and the prose is there to balance the poetry. They have to learn how to combine the spiritual and the physical in love. Because love has both components in Shakespeare's view. It's got to be a realistic love. It's got to involve sexuality. It moves towards marriage. It moves towards generation. It's the real deal. On the other hand, it's not just rutting in the fields. There's got to be some poetry to it. And again, Shakespeare is just brilliant in showing how this operates. Let me go through very quickly the Touchstone and Audrey love to give some sense of this. This would be, just let's start on page 33. We see that Touchstone can't take courtly love seriously. Indeed, he parodies it. This would be page 33, about Act 2, Scene 4, about line 44. When he talks about love and what it was like, I remember when I was in love, I broke my sword upon a stone and bid him take that for coming a night to Jane's smile. And I remember the kissing of her battler and the cow's dugs that her pretty chopped hands had milked. And I remember the wooing of a peascod instead of her, for whom I took 2 cods, and giving her them again, said with weeping tears, "Wear these for my sake." We that are true lovers run to strange capers, but as all is mortal in nature, so is all nature and love mortal in folly. He finds love ridiculous. It's the subject of laughter for him. That it is basically the copulation of cattle as he sees it. And he understands how much the matter of love is just gestures, courtly gestures. Wear these for my sake. We've heard that all the way since Richard II, when Prince Hal put on a lady's favor, the challenge in the lists. This is what lovers are like to Touchstone. It's all a joke for him. And so he's in the country. There's not much to do here, as we learn. And so he decides he'll have a little romp in the hay with this available woman, Audrey. So turn to page 62. This is Act 3, Scene 3, about line 13. Shakespeare emphasizes so perfectly. This is the anti-poetical love we're going to see here. Truly, Touchstone says to Audrey, truly I would the gods had made thee poetical. And Audrey says, I do not know what poetical is. She's never even heard of poetry. Not just that she doesn't know much poetry, she doesn't even know what it is. This is so remote, as we'll see from Sylvius and Phoebe, who live in a world of poetry. Is it honest in deed and word? Is it a true thing? And then Touchstone, showing his affinity to Plato in the Republic. No, truly, for the truest poetry is the most feigning, and lovers are given to poetry, and what they swear in poetry may be said as lovers, they do feign. Do you wish then that the gods had made me poetical? I do truly, for thou swearest to me thou art honest. So he's playing with the fact that poetry lies. Poetry is pure fiction. So no poetry for him. And so he tells her, when she asks, would you not have me honest? He says, no. And she can't understand it. Top of page 63, so about line 30 in the scene. Well, I am not fair, and therefore I pray the gods make me honest. Truly, and to cast away honesty upon a foul slut were to put good meat into an unclean dish. I am not a slut, though I thank the gods I am foul. Touchstone says, well, praise be the gods for thy foulness. Sluttishness may come hereafter. It is the craziest love duet in all of world drama here. It is the inversion of love poetry. It isn't prose. It strips away all the glamour of love. Shakespeare's not endorsing this. I mean, he's showing you how chilling in a way this is, how brutal it gets down to the facts. This isn't love, we would say, but it has a kind of crazy logic to it that Touchstone doesn't want what every man claims to want, a beautiful, faithful woman. Now, Touchstone is a cynic, very opposite of an idealist. And what he rejects here is idealism in love, kind of the thing we've seen in Romeo, the kind of thing we see in Sylvius in this play. Why? Because he knows idealists always get disappointed. You want the perfect woman? You're not going to get it. You're not going to get the most beautiful woman in the world who's also totally faithful to you, especially if your name is Touchstone and you're a professional fool. This is not in the cards for him. Fate did not deal him this hand. And so, in a way, he just wants to settle for the barest minimum, and then he won't be disappointed. All I want is an ugly wife who will be unfaithful to me. I'm not recommending this, and Shakespeare's not recommending it. But the idea is to show the inversion of the normal romantic dream. If you don't ask for a paragon of beauty and the most faithful woman in the world, the patient Griselda, whatever, then you can be pretty sure he'll be satisfied. That's why, well, praise be the gods for thy foulness, sluttishness may come hereafter. And so he really has got this down to the nitty-gritty, as we would say. On page 64, Act 3, Scene 3, about line 75, Jacob says, will you be married, motley? Will you be married, fool? I, as the ox hath his bow, so the horse his curb, and the falcon her bells, so man hath his desires, and as pigeon's bill, so wedlock would be nibbling. Now this is materialism at its most basic here. It's basically saying we're animals, we have sex drives, we fulfill them. And as pigeon's bill, so wedlock would be nibbling. This is the antithesis of Petrarchan love poetry, which always occurs on an ideal plane and which does not move towards the sexual act. In Touchstone's mind, everything moves towards the sexual act, and love is just a purely animal desire for him. Now Shakespeare is setting this up as a negative pole. Remember, he doesn't want this for Orlando and Rosalind. They mustn't reduce love to pure sex. But he's showing what it would be like if it would be. And so indeed, page 65, Touchstone reduces marriage to its basics, This is Act 3, Scene 3, line about 93. Come, sweet Audrey, we must be married, or we must live in Bawdry. That just pretty much says it all there. If we can't have sex legally if we're not married. By the way, he doesn't arrange the all-time legally binding marriage, but and indeed, we're not really too confident in the lasting quality of this relationship. If you turn to page 101, Act 5, Scene 4, where we're finally told prophecies for each of the little couples here. This is Act 5, Scene 4, line 135. The goddess of marriage, Hymen says to Touchstone Audrey, you and you were sure together as the winter to foul weather. There may be storms ahead for this little romance here, because indeed it lacks all romance. We've been seeing all these idealistic relationships, Romeo and Juliet, all these Petrarchan lovers. This is, if you will, Mercutio's view of love here. This is a sense that love is really a matter of sex. You see it on page 50 when Touchstone hears Orlando's verses to Rosalind, and we'll be talking about this on Thursday, but just for the moment now, Act 3, Scene 2, about line 100, Touchstone says, I can write verses like this forever. Look, if a hart do lack a hind, let him seek out Rosaline. If the cat will after kind, so be sure will Rosaline. Notice he keeps using animal images for love here. Wounded garments must be lined, so must slender Rosaline. They that reap must sheaf and bind, then to cart with Rosaline. Sweetest nut had sourest rind, such a nut is Rosaline. He that sweetest rose will find, must find love's prick. And Rosaline, you can be sure that's a pun there in Shakespeare. Now again, this is not Shakespeare's view of love, but he's offering it as a kind of antithesis to the overly spiritualized view of Petrarchan love we get in the other lovers. So what the hope here again is to achieve some kind of happy medium, that Rosalind and Orlando will understand that love ultimately involves sex because it's going to involve marriage and children and all those things. But for that, they can't let themselves get caught in the opposite impasse, which is a love so spiritual, so idealized, so poetical as the love of Sylvius and Phoebe that's not going anywhere. Okay, next time I will talk about Sylvius and Phoebe and then go on to analyze Rosaline and Orlando. But got a couple of minutes here. Any questions about any of this today? Yes?
You said at the beginning that this is a scenario where virtue isn't recognized and vice is praised, but it seems that the problem with Rosalind and Orlando is that both Frederick and Oliver say the people see your virtue and they like you, and that's the problem for us. That's why we have to end it.
Okay, that's fair enough. Let me qualify. The question is, Orlando and Rosalind are praised by the people in this community, and that's the problem for the evil characters like Oliver and Duke Frederick. What I was saying, we can put it this way: in the court, the values are inverted, but the court isn't the whole country, we would say, and indeed it's something we saw in the history plays. Again, the court, think of the court as the Beltway, the Beltway bubble. Within that world, everything's distorted and inverted. The people are more natural. They understand more what virtue is. And, you see it again and again in Shakespeare that in Hamlet's the problem in the court, but the people love Hamlet. Shakespeare has a sense that the ordinary people, they can appreciate goodness. The problem is within the court. And the one way the court is embubbled, if I can go in a word, is that it's cut off from the outside people. See that there? But it's a very, very good point. I'm glad I made that qualification. Okay, always we get good questions. So next time we'll mainly examine the love affair of Rosalind and Orlando.